when you look around and ask yourself, what's happened to this country at the same time we're doing everything we can to lose the reserve status? Could this actually be intended? And I ask that, and I wonder, and I think about it all the time. I mean, we're a country that is 155 trillion in debt with 5 trillion in assets, according to the 2022 U.S. government balance sheet, with the largest asset of the U.S. government being student debt of $1.6 trillion, the largest asset. We are broke, we are insolvent, and maybe they figured they have two choices: inflate, default, or how about a third choice? Incentivize all of these countries to dump the dollar, to no longer use the dollar for oil, and then you have a villain.
Last month, while speaking at a central banking conference in Nassau, Federal Reserve Governor Christopher Waller argued that the dollar will continue to maintain its reserve currency status, despite increasing talk about de-dollarization. Recent commentary warning of a possible decline in the status of the US dollar raises concerns about the effects of sanctions against Russia, US political dysfunction, the rise of digital assets, and China's efforts to bolster usage of the renminbi, Waller began in his speech, adding, "I do not expect to see the US dollar lose its status as the world's reserve currency anytime soon, nor even see a significant decline in its primacy in trade and finance. Recent developments that some have warned could threaten that status have, if anything, strengthened it." Waller's statement is an example of the deceitful and misleading reaction US officials have shown towards warnings that the dollar is gradually losing its status as the world's reserve currency. Despite this misleading official narrative, foreign investors like China are rapidly dumping US treasuries and using other currencies in international trade. Yet, people like Waller and Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen continue to insist that countries like Russia, China, and other BRICS countries cannot trust each other enough to divest from the US dollar completely. Yet experts argue that this is exactly what is happening. During a recent interview with journalist and YouTuber Natalie Brunell, Andy Schectman, renowned bullion dealer and precious metals analyst, discusses his views on de-dollarization, why officials like Waller and Yellen continue to wave off the danger, and how this is all an intended controlled demolition of our financial system. According to Andy, there is a sinister endgame nobody is aware of, but everything is going just as planned by our government and unelected decision makers, like the World Economic Forum and its wealthy members. We will present clips from the interview. As we do, please take a little time to like this video, share the message to warn others, and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this. Everything you do helps with the YouTube algorithm and helps us grow the channel. Thanks for your support and enjoy the video.
If you look at the lead economic advisor to the United States government, his name is Jared Bernstein, and Jared has a degree in music and a master's degree in social work. He's the lead economic advisor to the Biden administration. His entire thesis is to lose the world reserve status. It's a privilege we can no longer afford. And he's written reports that were picked up in both the Washington Post and the New York Times on this. One was called Dethrone King Dollar. And when Trump threw tariffs on China, he came out and publicly said, fantastic, maybe now we'll lose the reserve status. So keep that in mind as we go through this. And it's really very important to try and understand what gold represents, but we go back and we look at the reclassification of it as a tier one asset. We look at the repatriation by the central banks and then their massive buying spree that really started in 2018 and continues through today. So gold, there's something about it. But one of the things that we have been seeing lately is a lot of these countries like China, they used to have almost 3 trillion in our bonds. They're down to about 700 or 800 million. They're slowly selling bonds. And what are they doing with the proceeds? Well, remember, if you look at gold, it's averaged 7.8% per year since 2000, which has massively outpaced the bond market. And you don't have not only the risk of default, but you also don't have the sanctioning risk or the confiscation risk that we see going on with Russia. And so what they have been doing, I believe, is slowly shedding their treasuries and accumulating gold, because I think it's the antithesis of the Western system. And I think that they see that it's not only outperformed the bond market, but it has none of the counterparty risk. So what would it be? I guess it would be a point when they have enough countries lined up with them. And by the way, if you add the Chinese Belt Road Initiative, along with the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and the Eurasian Economic Union, these are all the same countries largely. Along with the BRICS, you're talking 90% of human population. And so all of these countries aligned together. You have two of the three biggest nuclear arsenals. You have larger swath of global GDP already. You have way more a percentage of human population and military might. And what do you know? They say, listen, you guys signed an executive order to go green. We really don't align ideologically. We don't like what you've done to Iran and to Russia, members of the BRICS, whom you have sanctioned them. And in the case of Russia, you're now talking about confiscating. We appreciate everything that you've done for us, but we're going to go a different direction. You are going green, so we're going to no longer take dollars for oil. And bang, just like that. Every country on the planet who's had to stockpile them to accumulate energy or to buy energy, it's created a synthetic demand for the dollar. And when that moment ends, very, very quickly, I think things would get very, very real. Now, everyone thinks that this is going to happen. It hasn't happened, so it won't happen. But you can see the dollar divestment. You can see the alternatives in gold. You can see the pushback. You can see they're all joining together. And if you look at the countries who have joined, just between Iran, Russia, United Arab Emirates, and Saudi Arabia, you're talking the majority of all the oil production on the planet, or at least a large swath of it. And you look at the countries that have applied and are in, including Egypt and Ethiopia and all of these. They have the Red Sea covered. They have the Straits of Hormuz covered. And then you look at the United Arab Emirates. For me to say OPEC will make this admission, well, that's kind of provocative. Well, let's take a step back. United Arab Emirates just came out and said, and it's funny, they made the announcement 3 days before they had a United Nations summit on climate change in Dubai about 2 months ago. And 3 days before you have 200 delegates from around the world show up in Dubai, you had, and it was presided over by the chairman of the state-owned oil company, ironically enough, they come out and say, we're no longer taking oil for dollars.
According to an IMF report from December 2023, the dollar's share in global central bank reserves dropped in the year's third quarter. The dollar accounted for 59.2% of foreign exchange reserves, down from 59.4% in the 3 months leading to the end of June 2023. About 2 decades ago, the dollar's share in global central bank reserves was above 70%, which shows that despite the pushback by officials, de-dollarization is happening, maybe even faster than many people believe. During the interview, Andy argues that everything is intentional and interwoven. The border crisis, the banking sector crisis, and the massive national debt. Everything is being carefully orchestrated to make the public lose confidence in the US until everything boils over into one final crisis that will wipe away hundreds of billions of dollars overnight. When that happens, Andy believes the WEF and our puppet governments will finally reveal their endgames, which will be disastrous for those who are unprepared. Let's get back to the interview.
How outside the realm of possibility would it be for all of these countries to say, look, you weaponize the dollar, you confiscate the dollar, we don't align ideologically, you're inflating away your currency, your bond market has been atrocious for the past year and a half. Thanks, but no thanks. We're going a different direction. And I think you can ask yourself, could this actually be intended? Could it be, or is it too stupid to be stupid? I mean, by weaponizing the dollar, by signing an executive order to go green, you couldn't ask to fit Jared Bernstein's thesis any better. And then you look at what's happening in the United States with the open borders and the questions centering around the election and the fairness and equality of the justice system and the lawlessness and all of these things that make people around the world who used to aspire to come to the United States and have the American dream, they say, what the hell's going on in that country? I don't want to be there. They're third world. I mean, as crazy as that sounds, when you look around and ask yourself, what's happened to this country at the same time we're doing everything we can to lose the reserve status, could this actually be intended? And I ask that, and I wonder, and I think about it all the time. I mean, we're a country that is 155 trillion in debt with 5 trillion in assets, according to the 2022 U.S. government balance sheet, with the largest asset of the U.S. government being student debt of $1.6 trillion, the largest asset. We are broke, we are insolvent, and maybe they figured they have two choices: inflate, default, or how about a third choice? Incentivize all of these countries to dump the dollar, to no longer use the dollar for oil. And then you have a villain. It's Xi Jinping and Putin and OPEC. How could they do this to us? How could they do this to us? And if everyone dumps dollars, you have a massive tidal wave of dollars hitting our shores, an inflationary tidal wave, which does what? Pumps interest rates up to the moon to compensate for the loss in purchasing power. Not something Powell wants to do, but the market did it, and you blow up stocks, bonds, real estate, the banking system, the insurance companies. It's the global reset. It's the reset that Klaus Schwab talks about, and how you don't fall on the sword. You point to them. And ironically enough, the number 2 in charge at the U.S. government is a modern monetary theorist, Lael Brainerd, who introduced FedNow just a few months ago. She ran point for it, which is like Venmo and Zelle on steroids, backed by the Fed. And she ran point also working with MIT in development of the new CBDC. Who knows if we'll see it? But what does she want? A culling of the banks and issue a central bank digital currency. So the only way you get people to do that is if the dollar gets dumped. It's no longer taken for oil. Every country in the world who's had to own it, creating that demand, sells them quickly. The dollars hit our shore. Inflation blows up everything with interest rates. And you say, hey, have no fear. I know you've lost everything, your stocks, your bonds, your bank, your real estate, your insurance company, but Lael Brainerd is here with her CBDC. Sign on the dotted line and we'll make you whole. Natalie, I think this all the time, because if not, our politicians are leading us down a very, very, very dark path, and they're just moronic. Or could it be they know what they're doing and they're trying to find someone to blame this on for the brain dead monetary and fiscal policy that we have embarked upon for the last 20 years or longer?
The ruling class has always been known to make disastrous policies and chalk it all up to inefficiency. But how many of these are intentionally and purposely crafted to suit the agenda of the puppet masters? It is clear that Western leaders, especially, are bungling up their duties. Is that due to inefficiency or another phase of the controlled demolition experts have been warning us of? One thing that remains clear is that the government does not just take action. Everything has a purpose. Whether it is Jared Bernstein's dethrone King Dollar push, Lael Brainerd's work on CBDCs, or the obvious consolidation of smaller US banks into the too-big-to-fail banks, everything is connected, and the endgame is much closer than we can all imagine. Please share your comments and observations on Andy's interview in the comments section below. Also, ensure you subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications, and hit the like button for more. Thanks for watching.